You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Cinema Gold Show. As always, I'm your host, Larry Leese. Today we're diving into all the latest headlines from around the industry. But first, let's take a look at the box office. Zootopia 2 is feasting on a Thanksgiving box office weekend with a $156 million opening. Walt Disney's animation Zootopia 2 and Universal Broadway's musical adaptation Wicked for Good delivered movie theaters a much-needed 1-2 punch for the holiday weekend box office. Zootopia debuted on Wednesday, kicking off a 5-day Thanksgiving opening weekend. Its $156 million estimated gross is the second best 5-day Thanksgiving debut, behind Disney's animated adventure movie Moana 2, which opened in 2024 to $225 million domestically. The end of the year holiday season is as important to Hollywood as the highly lucrative summer season, especially when coming off of a historically bad October. According to Sean Robbins, the director of analytics at Fandango and founder of the analytics firm Box Office Theory. Hollywood stuck to its formula from last year when a Wicked film and an animated sequel from Disney drew big audiences to theaters. Last weekend, Wicked for Good beat expectations when it opened to $150 million. It raked in another $62.8 million Friday through Sunday, bringing its domestic total to $270.4 million. Together, Wicked for Good and Zootopia 2 have earned a combined $249 million domestically over the 5 days, according to ComScore data. Zootopia 2 also earned $400 million internationally, bringing it to an estimated $556 million globally, and Wicked for Good has earned $393.25 million globally since its debut. The two films are more complementary than competitive, largely because the PG-rated movies appeal to family audiences and opened during 2 separate weekends. Lionsgate Films' Now You See Me, Now You Don't came in at number 3, earning $7 million Friday through Sunday, followed by Disney's Predator Badlands at $4.8 million, and Paramount Pictures' The Running Man at $3.7 million. A24's romantic comedy Eternity opened to a meager $5.2 million over the 5-day weekend, notching the number 6 spot overall. Romantic comedies have dwindled in popularity at the box office in recent years, according to analysts. In 2009, there were 20 romantic comedy-wide releases, compared with up to 4 annual releases today, according to David A. Gross, who publishes industry newsletter Franchise Read. At number 8 this weekend was the opening of Focus Features Hamnet at $1.35 million. The historical drama detailing Shakespeare's inspiration for the play Hamlet is considered a contender for Academy Award nominations. Analysts are hopeful that Hollywood could rake in a whopping $9 billion at the domestic box office this year. The box office is currently up 1.24% year to date and would need another $1.2 billion to reach that milestone. The strength of the schedule overall still points to $9 billion being very, very likely, according to Robbins, who noted that the industry will either fall short or slightly above the $9 billion mark. It may largely rely on Disney's Avatar Fire and Ash, which opens on December 19th. And speaking of Avatar Fire and Ash, let's move on to our next topic. And that is, James Cameron has said if Avatar Fire and Ash doesn't make enough money to justify a 4th and 5th film, he's ready to walk away and write a book to close all the threads. What happens if Avatar Fire and Ash doesn't make enough profit to convince Disney to bankroll Avatar 4 and 5? James Cameron has said that he's ready to walk away from the franchise, adding he'll write a book to resolve the one thread Avatar 3 leaves open. The special effects heavy Avatar film costs a huge amount of money to produce, but they have historically made billions of dollars at the box office. Avatar Fire and Ash, due out this month, is expected to follow suit, and the pressure is on it to deliver for Disney. So James Cameron can realize his vision and release Avatar 4 and 5 over the next 6 years. Speaking on the Town with Matthew Bologna podcast, Cameron admitted he was feeling nervous about Avatar Fire and Ash's box office performance, and was mindful of the forces working against theatrical releases in 2025. There's the potential for sequelitis, Cameron noted. saying, quote, people tend to dismiss sequels unless it's the third Lord of the Rings movie and you want to see what happens to everybody, which in my mind, this is the culmination of a story arc, but that may not be how the public sees it. And there's the 1-2 punch of streaming and COVID, which means fewer people are going to the movies, 75% of what it was in 2019. When pressed on how much Avatar Fire and Ash cost to make, Cameron wouldn't be drawn into divulging a figure, but did dance around the issue by suggesting it was a lot of money, so the movie will have to make a lot of money. Saying, quote, it is one metric fucking ton of money, which means we have to make 2 metric fuck tons of money to make a profit. I have no doubt in my mind that this movie will make money. The question is, does it make enough money to justify doing it again? And on that point, Cameron admitted he was absolutely ready to walk away from Avatar if Fire and Ash flops. Again, saying, quote, I've been in Avatar land for 20 years. Actually 30 years because I wrote it in 95, but I wasn't working continuously on it for those first 10 years. Yeah, absolutely sure. If this is where it ends, cool. But what about those open story threads? There's one open thread, I'll write a book, Cameron said. What Cameron won't do is hand Avatar over to someone else. Absolutely not. I have choices there, he explained. There are levels in which I immerse. I can produce it. I don't think there'd ever be a version where there's another Avatar movie that I didn't produce closely. But in terms of taking over my life, that's a threshold issue for me. Avatar 4 is down for release on December 21st, 2029, with Avatar 5 due out December 19th, 2031. Cameron, now 71, would be close to 80 years old by the time it all wraps up. Avatar remains the highest grossing movie of all time, not adjusted for inflation, and has earned a staggering $2.9 billion across several theatrical runs. Avatar Endgame overtook Avatar for a brief period before Avatar then stole its crown back via fresh re-release. 2022 sequel Avatar The Way of Water earned $2.3 billion, meanwhile cementing it as the third highest grossing film of all time, just ahead of Cameron's own Titanic at $2.2 billion. Can Avatar Fire and Ash come close to its predecessors? The only movie to crack the $2 billion mark at the box office since Avatar 2 came out was Neza 2. Feels like the world is in a very different place even now, just a few years after The Way of the Water. Let me know in the comment section below, how do you think Avatar will do this month? And with that, let's dive right into some more news, and that is Matthew Lillard has some disappointing news for his Five Nights at Freddy's 2 fans. And let's dive in. Five Nights at Freddy's star Matthew Lillard has offered some advanced info on his role in the highly anticipated sequel to the horror hit and revealed something that fans definitely won't like. The Scream veteran will return in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 to play William Afton, but don't expect to see much of him, at least for now. The actor recently spoke to Coming Soon to promote the release of the film, which will arrive exclusively in theaters December 5th. Though he shared the disappointing news that his character isn't heavily featured in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but also revealed that the plan is to make 3 movies. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is set 1 year after the events of the first film, with Josh Hutcherson, Elizabeth Lail, Piper Rubio, and Lillard reprising their roles from the original. But while screenwriter and franchise mastermind Scott Cawthon found a way to bring back William for the sequel, Lillard admitted that he doesn't appear a lot in the film. The first Five Nights at Freddy's was a massive hit when it premiered in 2023. Although the COVID-19 pandemic heavily affected the way audiences attended theaters and schedules tilted more towards a streaming model, Universal sent the film to theaters for a wide release. It also premiered on Peacock simultaneously. But as bad as that sounds in terms of box office earnings, the video game adaptation was a game changer. Even though it was sent to streaming the same day it premiered in theaters, Five Nights at Freddy's was a box office triumph, all thanks to the fans who flocked to buy tickets. The film grossed more than $297 million against its modest $20 million budget, and despite the negative critical reception, it was seen as a win for Blumhouse Productions. Obviously, Jason Blum quickly began thinking of a sequel. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 will do its best to replicate the success of the first film. While it's unlikely that it surpasses the original, anything could happen, as the franchise still has a very strong following. This time it won't be on Peacock right away. Audiences will simply have to go to the theater, Lillard says Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is a possibility as long as people go to the theaters. Saying, quote, we'll get that final Harry Potter versus Voldemort or Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader in Five Nights at Freddy's. That's our hope. Within that, we'll get to do that and explore more. For now, we've got a long way to go. We've got to get people into the theaters. So with that, let me know your thoughts on this news. And are you planning on seeing Five Nights at Freddy's 2? If you are, let me know how you think it will do this weekend. And with that, let's dive into our next topic. And that is the 2025 WarGames. The 2025 Survivor Series WarGames is in the books. You may be saying to yourself, did anything actually happen? Well, a lot of stuff did get cemented into the future storylines, but we're going to go through the whole show. We're going to discuss it like we were just sat down as friends and loved ones. As you are here, please do hit that like button and the subscribe button, all that stuff. Now I like the women's War Games match a lot. I want to make that very clear before we do get into it, but I do think WWE has hit an iceberg, and this was always going to happen, where the expectation for what we were going to do in these matches is so damn high that when you have two of them, you were never going to be able to achieve it, right? It's always going to be the law of diminishing returns. So let's not pretend that they didn't all kick each other's asses. They did. You had AJ Lee, you had Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, Io Sky, and you had the Kabuki Warriors. And you had Becky Lynch. Why can't I remember anybody else? Oh yeah, Lash Legend, Nia Jax, which is actually one of the problems, right? I don't necessarily think Lash Legend has been brought in with the gravitas and the pizzazz that she should have done. She came out last for the heel team, and I kind of like the way the commentators sold it. Like, oh my gosh, Lash Legend, everything she's done at NXT has been brilliant. But we should be seeing that on the Raws and the SmackDowns. All that really happened is she turned up and she was like, my best friend is Nia Jax. And then she kind of fell into the background. Because that's always going to happen in War Games as well. There's 10 other people. But even when, and maybe this is just me, but I do think this is a point, AJ Lee climbed over the cage when she got in because Becky Lynch very hilariously pushed the cage door closed. But everybody instantly thought AJ Lee is going to jump off the top of the cage, which is actually what Cody did later. She still came off the top rope, which is a crazy move. And as a fan, you don't really understand how high it is until you get up there and you're like, I don't really want to jump off of this. But this is what our brains have done to us. We expect people to do crazy stuff. And we did get Io Sky coming off the top of the cage. While I understand this is the vocal minority, and I'm going to love that spot until the end of time, and I love the fact that she personalized that trash can. Why wouldn't you if you know you're going to do it? There were still people on the internet, again, probably the negative Nancy's, like, she does that every year. I'm not getting anything from it anymore. I don't think that is a fair criticism because I'm repeating what I've said in other comments and videos. If you have a really good body slam, you use that body slam in every single match. The attitude adjustment by John Cena is just a fireman's carry into a slam, but he does it because he has the best fireman's carry into a slam. So Io Sky knows this works in war game matches and has a pretty good success rate, right? You'll bring it back. But people just want more and more and more. And I kind of think if you just had one war games match, you could have put all the shenanigans and nonsense into that and not gone, well, we can't do this here because we got to do it there, etc., etc. I also think it's like the third year in a row that the women's match is kicked off the pay-per-view, which is a massively important spot to be on the top of the card because you got to set the tone. But when you're the first one and the second one's got X, Y, and Z, well, you can't do that. You have to do A, B, and C. Now I'm sounding way too critical here and way too negative because it was a really good match. And again, some of the weapon shots and some of the mad stuff that they were doing to each other, they will wake up going, but it's a fan feeling. I suppose a lot of people just expected more. And there has to be a level to this. Otherwise, what's going to happen is everyone's going to die. I do think it was quite lacking in stories as well, and the big story is AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch. Everybody hit Becky with a finishing move because she essentially ran away when Io did this crazy swan with the trash can. Doing that blind, she smacked her foot in the mat as well, and I'm not surprised. She doesn't know what she's doing. But yes, AJ Lee tapping out Becky Lynch means throughout the end of the year and into 2026, we should do that feud. I think Becky Lynch will probably get the IC title back, so we can add that to it as well, or maybe not actually. Maybe Becky Lynch went to management and said, "We don't need the Intercontinental Championship for this. Our star power is enough," which is true. And Becky, in her book, which is not the name of a cartoon, has said she would like to do more story-based programs as opposed to, "We're going after the title." That means we do have to make sure we don't lose the allure that the IC title had throughout 2025, because it's been one of the high points. But outside of that, like Charlotte Flair was never going to turn heel. She came out wearing gear in a tribute to a young girl. I think she was a kid that has got brain cancer or something. I can't remember. If you liked it, thumbs up. If you didn't like it, thumbs down. That's what's important to life. And can you imagine how much that would have meant to that person? I think the commentary said they've been friends for a couple of years, so that was wonderful. But there's no way she was turning heel, so that guess was a swing and a miss. We did get the Becky Lynch and AJ Lee stuff right, so that was good. You saw Kyra Zane save Asuka sort of at one point. Asuka accidentally missed it in Lash Legend. That's probably going to tie into a tag team. You might write the Kabuki Warriors versus Lash Legend and Nia Jax. I love Nia Jax. Nobody can do Nia Jax as well as Nia Jax, which is a strange sentence. But she was just there sort of making up the numbers. Again, we did a good job with Lash Legend, but I feel like we could have done more with it. Rhea Ripley, a massive star. I don't know who she's going to feud with coming out of the back of this, so that could be on me. She did have a good standoff with the Lash Legend. We also teased AJ Lee versus Asuka, but we're not going to get there anytime soon. So I just think we could have done more with this. And I think in the men's one, and maybe this is why we didn't, there are a lot of maybe we're going to do this match, and maybe we're going to do that match. Maybe we're going to run back Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Please don't. I've seen that way too many times. But the only real story coming out of the fact is I know I'm getting AJ Lee and Becky Lynch, which is going to be huge. You can main event shows with that. And maybe there's other stuff that I'm forgetting. But the fact that it didn't stand out like a sore thumb, maybe it should have stood out like a sore thumb. I also don't think people need to run out with weapons anymore. Although when Kyrie came out with a chain, so I should say, uh, Zayn came out with a chain because of course it rhymes and therefore it can be a poem or a hip hop song. It killed me. It's like she's so desperate to help Asuka. Now let's go back to them being the tag team champions and just let them have a bunch of bangers. We also have to talk about the fact that there were no shark cages. Now this is in reference to both WarGames matches, but what the flub, man? This isn't just some gimmick. That's half the fun. It's half the story. Because imagine at one point you had, I don't know, Braun Breaker and Bronson and Brock Lesnar stuck in a cage together. There's so much fun you could have had with that. And even more so with Cody Rhodes, Punk, Reigns. Now Punk actually started off the War Games. I don't want to get ahead of myself there. But Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, you could have kept coming back to those two and you could have had 1,000 stories. Now there could be a good reason for this, and we'll find out later and be like, man, I shouldn't have said anything. But in terms of just a reactive nature to it, that's a horrible mistake. It's like having a no DQ match with disqualifications, which is what they did in WCW a lot in the 2000s. I just cannot think of a good enough reason not to do it. There was some speculation on the internet, and I'm sure it's all baloney. Someone just said, well, Brock Lesnar doesn't want to be in a shark cage. I don't care what Brock Lesnar wants, man. I care that this is the match. You figure out a way to do it. Hell, you could have had him going in first. Anyone that goes, my character wouldn't do that, well, it could happen in real life. In real life, your character could get, caught in a shark cage. So maybe you should sit down for a bit and figure out what would my character do if they were caught in a shark cage. I thought that was a real disappointment, and you're allowed to watch this going, it's not that deep, bro. And it's not. I'm amplifying this for effect because it is a video, but I did still find it disappointing to the point I felt I'm going to talk about that on my video. You have to have shark cages in war games, and some people may go, it's not that important to the match. I disagree. Go back to the CM Punk Roman Reigns row they were having last year. Not only was that some of the most fun stuff we had done, but it also tied into the Paul Heyman stuff in arguably WrestleMania 41. So we've got to bring back the shark cages. We had to have the shark cages. No more not shark cages. I did like the women's match. It was very, very easy to watch, and everybody was going crazy. There was a bunch of wild shots. And again, actually, the Lash Legend, Rhea Ripley, Shamaru, whatever you want to call it, there was something there, and I thought that would be exciting. And really, that's what you have here. Asuka could take on all 9 other people in singles feuds if you so wish, in 2026. But you also have the Io Sky match. You have the Kairi Sane match eventually. Rhea Ripley and Io Sky probably going to go after the tag team titles. So they were being best of buds and they were being best of friends. They did that thing they did back in the NXT WarGames. It's blurring my brain now, but when Io hits the sky, Io hits the ropes 1,000 times before she does her big old dropkick. So they do have a union there. There was no real teasing that anyone's going after Stephanie Verkeers, so that's interesting. But it was a good match. I just think if next year one of them was the Elimination Survivor Series traditional match and the other was WarGames, in that WarGames you can go, right, you dudes or you dudettes, hate saying that, can go totally crazy here. And in the traditional Survivor Series match, go, right, this is how we're going to tell stories. You got to eliminate that guy, and you've got to eliminate that guy. I think WWE doesn't do it because they don't want people taking pins. And that is lame, man. Sometimes people have to lose. Your job is to figure out what happens after the fact. I think the highlight of the show was John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio. I really did. This was always going to draw a line down the middle because it was so crazy. It was shenanigans central. And thank you, Cena, for doing this. We actually, and they must have only come up with this idea over the last few days. I hope Penta's all right with it. But we did the Penta thing from Raw. Dominic did the Hurricanrana off of the barricade and landed horribly. They got me until the medical team came out. Everyone was like, oh no, he's really hurt. I was like, okay, this is quite clearly a parody of what we had just seen. But at first I was like, no more of that move. Please cancel it. But this is when Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez hit their finishing moves onto John Cena. I was looking around like, I did not expect this. This was not on my bingo card. And bless that man for doing it, because they can use that until the end of time, should they wish. The only thing I think WWE dropped the ball on as soon as they've done this, Dominic was like, ta-da, I've taken my med pack. He hit the 619 and the frog splash. They should have done the 1-2-0 kick out, because I think, one, the fans would have bought this as a finish, which would have been even better. But two, the referee all of a sudden going, well, I know he's got a pipe, right? Or a cigar. Well, I know that. I've seen this 1,000 times in professional wrestling. But this time, no, I refuse to count. It's on you for believing Dominic Mysterio's lies. How many times have we seen people feign an injury? How many times have we seen people feign an injury and then they do the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up? The ref also ejected Raquel and Roxanne, and at that point I was like, well, if you know what's going on, why don't you just DQ the match? The match should be a disqualification. John Cena has been beaten up. And this makes me a geek, right? And a nerd, and you'll be allowed to be listening to this if you're going to wrestle. It's supposed to be fun. I had a great time. I thought this match was awesome, and I would implore you all to go and watch it. It's worth 15 minutes of your time. It just sometimes makes you go, are you going to do this again? Of course you're not. I don't know. Small things sometimes irk me. I probably need more sleep. I was up at 3 in the morning, doing stuff for this episode and other content that I record. Finn Balor and JD McDonough then ran down. They got double AA'd, which I actually thought was quite nice, because don't forget, this is John Cena's last ever proper PLE, because that Saturday night's main event is like this weird wham-wham of a show. And then eventually, John Cena is about to win. He's hit his 72nd AA, and it's not another referee that comes down, because the referee got knocked out too. It's the returning Liv Morgan. I was like, man, this is wonderful. She goes, John Cena from the Elimination Chamber. She slapped Dominic Mysterio so hard, and she booted John Cena right in the balls. Hits him with the title shot. Dominic gets a frog splash and beats John Cena to win the IC title back. The conversation they had backstage, I'm just repeating myself again, hilarious. Here's what we're going to do, guys. Why do we have to screw over John? What's our beef with John Cena? The way they celebrated them being back together, the way that John Cena sold this, it was awesome, man. He just put over the entire Judgment Day group. And they should talk about this until at least September 2026. Because I think John Cena is going to win his last match. Dom now needs t-shirts that say, I was the last person to beat John Cena. I think that's huge. I think you can sell that as big as Brock Lesnar beating The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30. Had less shock value here because we were in San Diego, and I think most of us expected this. But you can turn that into an entire career character trait. He could be 42 years old and still be talking about the time he was the dude that beat John Cena in his last big match, like Jericho did with the I beat Austin and The Rock in a single night. He was also saying that, and it always worked because it was such a huge deal. Now, Rey Mysterio was kind of rubbish, being we were in San Diego, but let's not be too negative Nancy's here. This was wonderful and a great way for John Cena to go out. I really hope Raquel and Roxanne lean into this as well. I've got no notes other than the notes I did give, but I would rather have this than not have this. So even with that nonsense in the middle, I loved it, man. It's my favorite kind of wrestling, and WWE does it very well. So next up, Stephanie Vercare versus Nikki Bella was all right. I honestly could stop it and move on. Stephanie just beat her. Now she's going to go on to another program, and she does this for 6 months. That's okay. She goes on a run and maybe has 5 successful title defenses. I'd rather a big feud, big promos, because again, I think that's what the WWE does best. Because we didn't do that here, and the heel turn came very quickly before this match, and all we got was a couple of videos, and that attack that we did on Raw didn't really have that little oomph to it. I think the fans in the building were quite tired from the John Cena match because they had lost their minds throughout all of it. And when Steph just won with the flippy dippy doodah corkscrew thing, I think everyone just went, yeah, okay, let's move on to the men's war game. And that's unfair because the match itself was good. I thought Nikki Bella looked great here. Best she's looked since she came back. Steph definitely okay. Obviously one of the best people they have on the roster. Full stop. I kind of feel, no, I don't believe that actually. I'm going to retract that statement. The whole match was built around 2 devil's kisses, one on the announce table, one in the ring. But you should do that. That's a big move. It gets some massive pop. But I suppose it made it feel, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I just mean with a pay-per-view, you want that little bit of secret sauce on top. It felt more like something we would have done on Raw. But I hate saying that because the Raw matches are brilliant. So you can get great Raw matches. I don't want to sound like every television match we do absolutely sucks. I'm just worried, I may be assuming here, that we are going to get a second match between these two and be like, why would you give Nikki Bella a second match? She became an a-hole and she lost. Maybe that's irking me as well. That's only just popped in my brain. I don't like it when people turn heel and they don't get what they want, at least on the first hurdle. Like you could have Stephanie Vercare win this back. I doubt you could have done it on John Cena's Saturday night's main event because he wants NXT guys. But she could have won it back on a random episode of Raw, really, to keep those shows more interesting. But turning heel and then losing, you're like, well, you're a loser. You threw your morals out the window and you still weren't able to do it. Maybe Nikki Bella just deserves a little bit better than that. I think sometimes people are way too disrespectful to Nikki Bella, and I was quite enjoying a heel turn. Now I kind of feel like she's in no man's land. I just don't really have a lot to say about it. It was very, very well worked, and they're very, very good. I think Stephanie Vercare is going to be brilliant before long, just needed a cherry on top. But there was no cherry. Let's just talk about the hooded man that ran in, because that's the big twist, right? He curb stomped CM Punk. Everybody thinks it's Seth Rollins. Braun Breaker speared Punk, got the win. I kind of saw that coming. So we're the greatest people ever. I'm pretty sure it's Austin Theory. Of course, being me, I want it to be Repo Man. And we can still speculate to our heart's content because we've not seen this man's face. I find it funny that they didn't reveal it, but it also worries me too. There have been times in the past when hooded people have arrived and masked people have arrived, and you've never found out. It's just a way to finish a match. Why wouldn't WWE reveal it? We wait and see, I suppose. Maybe there are things I'm not thinking about. Maybe because we had to do the Roman Punk Cody thing that I'll talk about in just a second. But it was quite clearly done to allow Braun Breaker to get the pin, and we should go straight into CM Punk versus Braun Breaker for the world title. A little concerned we're not going to do that. But I think Austin Theory makes the most sense. Drew McIntyre is not in the vision properly. Brock Lesnar probably won't see him now for another 47 years, I should say. Seth Rollins not going to come back for ages, and even then, he'll be feuding with the Vision. But Austin Theory does have the connection to Seth during the pandemic era, where he joined the cult with Buddy Matthews. And also, I think you want a third member in there, and you want 3 guys that feel like the future. Now you can say whatever you want about Austin Theory, but he still does have a big upside. We just gotta find it. Now I think that's being a babyface. I think that's where WWE keeps going wrong. Again, what do I know? I'm an idiot. But I've seen him in interviews and stuff he did in NXT. I think he's a wonderful goof. When you're a wonderful goof, you should be a good guy. But still, Braun Breaker getting a big push, Bronson Reed getting a big push, and Austin being the third guy, along with Paul Heyman, who are basically building a brand new Dangerous Alliance. I do like that. But I will concede to you that WWE these days rely on we need a finish, somebody can run in with a hood. There should be a new rule. You have to come out, we have to see your face now, because otherwise this is happening way too much. But it was a fun way to end the night, right? Everyone likes a cliffhanger. Everyone's like, oh, who's it going to be? And we could be completely wrong. Maybe it's my grandma, which would be a bit weird because she's 80 plus, 90s. But the other big thing at the end is that Cody Rhodes was left all alone. Like CM Punk and Roman Reigns helped each other up because they're bros in Zootopia. You can look it up. They're zebras now. But Roman said to Cody, this is the last time I'm ever going to team with you. Punk looked at him like, well, you didn't do great there, so unfair on Cody. What did Cody do? Cody came in and went totally crazy. And he was helping people out. Although he did hit CM Punk at one point by accident. But I would caveat that with CM Punk snuck up behind him. It's WarGames, CM Punk. He doesn't know you're not one of the bad guys. We could be building to a triple threat. I think we really left it ambiguous. It could be Punk Cody, it could be Roman Cody, it could be Roman Punk. Maybe that's why they fist bumped to completely throw you off course. I still think Cody Rhodes versus Punk is the biggest match that the WWE has that they've never done before. And if you can get a title on Roman before then, which kind of spins him off to fight whoever, then you do CM Punk versus Cody. That's what I would have done. I don't think we've ever got a definitive answer here either way. But I did like this match. Brock Lesnar leaving the cage, I could have done without. That's very much like a shark cage thing to me. We had sold this idea that once you're in the cage, you can't leave the cage. And then Brock left the cage. They were like, oh, it's because the match beyond hasn't started yet. All these caveats. But just keep the match type simple. It's WarGames. These are the rules. You then have to live in those rules. I think it allows people to be more creative. I get why we did the Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar face off. I've just seen that match so many times. I don't know what else they could do again, so I don't need it being teased. And also, I do feel like this. People disagree with me a lot, and more power to you, but I'm just a bit done with the Brock Lesnar. Comes in, F5, F5, suplex, suplex, suplex. We've had it in now for, we'll say, from WrestleMania 30. I think that's fair. So for 12 years, I think if anybody else has done that, we'd be asking for a change. You don't need to change his presentation. Still comes across as very legitimate. But I think we need something different here. Although he did get Crossroads, he did get GTS. I don't know, it's just hard to get pumped for that when you do see it all the time. But we did get some crazy spots here, and Punk was bleeding at one point, I think courtesy of Drew, because those two being together. But that's another question. Like, Drew, what is Drew's direction after this? He was kind of just there. I would argue Bronson Reed was kind of just there too, although he did do a bunch of tsunamis. Braun Breaker kind of fell into the background, but then he got the big victory, so that was good. And he speared everybody at one point. So it is interesting. I mean, Logan Paul, once again, sort of filled his role well, but I don't think he's going to be around for a while either. So that's probably why he didn't build any stories. I am underselling this. Like, if you watch it, you'll enjoy it. I suppose, and I don't like doing this because I do believe comparison is the thief of joy, but in terms of my initial reactions, I wasn't as pumped as maybe the maybe the one last year. And of course, not 2 years ago, because the surprise there was not only Randy Orton, it was Punk. Kind of weird that Randy didn't come back here either. If you sit down and watch it with the 45 minutes to an hour that it's on, you'll have a good time. And they do a few things when you're like, ooh, they're so damn crazy. But aside from the intrigue at the end, I do think they'll leave it like it's the best thing ever. Not that it needs to be that. I don't think every single PLE needs to sort of pull a rabbit out of the hat. You're going to always get comparisons to other war games. And I truly do, just to repeat myself, to try and get how I'm feeling across, because I really had a good time watching it. Like, what is it, 3 hours, 15 minutes? But if you just had one war games, I think it would have opened you up to put all your eggs into that basket. And then the other match could have been something different, as opposed to, well, we got to balance them out a little bit. But still, if I was going to sort of, wiggle my fingers in the air like I do elsewhere, it would be, it's a positive show. It's a good show. And the John Cena thing, slap bang in the middle, if you can call it that, is absolutely awesome. And Dom's a 2-time Intercontinental Champion, which is pretty cool. Everyone deserves credit for the amount of effort they put in. I suppose I'm not desperate to see Raw. I'm excited to see Raw. I'm excited to see who the hooded man was. But there was definitely one Survivor Series WarGames where I was like chomping at the bit. I wouldn't necessarily say we got that, but it was still a very good show. Some things are just nuanced. Now, please do drop me a comment below and let me know what you thought about the Survivor Series. And with that, let's get into our next topic, which is our review of Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out film. Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, was dropped in select theaters on November 26th. And shockingly, I didn't even hear about it until I saw like a random ad on what was it, Facebook pop up. And Knives Out, uh, Wake Up a Dead Man's a Knives Out mystery, will actually drop on Netflix on December 12th. But with that, let's get into our review of it. After a brief sojourn in a galaxy far, far away, acclaimed director Rian Johnson has spent the past 8 years working on the misadventures of Daniel Craig's detective Benoit Blanc. It's a Netflix film. Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, will get a limited theatrical release, but it will ultimately be seen by most audiences on the small screen. And that's a shame, since it looks great and would likely go over well as a late autumn crowd pleaser. It's also the first movie in the series that's a straightforward murder mystery instead of a subversion of one, which winds up being the film's best attribute. The film starts off not with Blanc, but with our functional main character, Reverend Judd Dupuncity, a down on his luck young priest assigned to aid a small, insular parish led by the domineering Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, played by Josh Brolin. Wicks is an elder firebrand who keeps his small group of church-going regulars in check with rants and deceit, leading Judd to take no small umbrage with the man. But when, after a sermon, Wicks collapses with a blade in his back, there is no obvious way for someone to have killed him, even though all eyes fall on Judd for having the most obvious motive. Enter Craig's Benoit Blanc, who finds what might just be his most perplexing case yet. As a general supporter of Johnson's films who was severely disappointed in the second film in the series, Glass Onion, it's good to see the director back in strong form with Wake Up Dead Man. It doesn't beat Knives Out for emotional resonance. O'Connor's layered but understated turn as Judd doesn't quite generate the same amount of pathos as Ana de Armas Marta did in the first film, but gets close. But it does wind up being the best mystery of the bunch. The answer here is not obvious, and the method of how the killing and subsequent machinations were achieved is actually inventive. And while not every plot beat or line of dialogue is perfectly executed, Johnson's command of his directorial style is as capable as it's ever been. This is especially true of the film's visuals. Johnson's films, all of which have been photographed by longtime collaborator Steve Yedlin, always look fantastic, and Wake Up Dead Man is no exception. Although the marketing may have oversold the film's alleged gothic influence, which amounts to no more than 2 or 3 standout moments, the earthy green-brown color palette and use of lighting and framing conjures a genuinely cozy atmosphere in its early segments. This makes the darker turns later on feel like an invasion of a sanctified space. And since the film is about a small church unraveling after the death of their pastor, it's a potent parallel. Yet, if Wake Up Dead Man is a stronger film than its predecessor in terms of plot, it shares the same weaknesses in terms of character. Craig is as watchable as he's ever been, and both O'Connor and Brolin do their jobs admirably. But like with previous Blanc films, Johnson stuffs his cast with capable performers and then fails to give half of them anything to do. Talented actors like Kerry Washington, Andrew Scott, Kaylee Spaney are technically in this movie, but they don't leave an impression because the screenplay doesn't afford them much room. This is doubly frustrating because every member of Wick's parish is given at least a hint of a motive, but the movie doesn't develop many of them beyond a cursory setup. Leaving these characters stranded as they search for a purpose the film never bothers to provide. Also, Johnson hasn't completely curbed his worst inclinations as a writer, sneaking in several cheeky references to things like Star Wars, his deal with Netflix, and discussing the tropes of classic murder mystery novels like John Dixon Carter's The Hollow Man. Most of these gags feel like Johnson playing the audience instead of the characters acting in character, which hurts the movie's Verisimilitude, it's not a deal breaker by any means, but if Johnson intends to keep going with this series, it's a tendency he'd be wise to drop. Still, the auteur filmmaker following up Knives Out, novel inversion of the classic whodunit formula, and Glass Onion's sadly laden and poorly structured plot with a real deal murder mystery without any gimmicks was exactly what the series needed. So, Wake Up Dead Man may not be the best Benoit Blanc film, but it satisfies by playing along with genre expectations instead of trying to outsmart them. Fans of the franchise may not notice the difference, but those who have been hungry for a more conventional mystery that the previous films have avoided up until now will likely come away pleased. However, the movie sells its full cast a little short, which is the biggest weakness to address if Ryan Johnson decides to press on with this series. And before we go, let me know your thoughts on Wake Up Dead Man. If you want to support the channel, you can buy us a copy at buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. As always, this episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. So don't forget, leave us a comment on all the topics we covered in the comment section below. And of course, you can find us on all major podcast platforms, Amazon, Google, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast from, we'll be there. Once again, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.